Now last week I beat Fallout 4 with only gifts. This video got me thinking what could I possibly do that's different from that, and so I decided I'd beat the game with stolen items. Now I decided to do something a bit different for this video in that I don't actually want to use just stolen items. I am also allowed to use the caps that I am stealing, I'm just not allowed to buy, like, say, a Gatling laser with it. The only thing I can actually buy with the caps is ammo. Anyways, the challenge is pretty self-explanatory, so I'm gonna start the run. Loading in, I make my character and I ensure that it is definitely not me. We don't want to get caught after all. There is literally nothing I could steal in the vault, so I just left and got ready to start stealing crap. Now, in order to start acquiring items in a less than ideal fashion, I need to actually find a place that's owned by someone. Now, there are a couple places that I had in mind, but the first one I decided to start with was Abernathy Farm, because it's literally right there. As soon as I got there, I started picking up everything that was marked red, and I did try my hand at a little bit of pickpocketing, but honestly it didn't work out too well, so I had to move on a bit earlier than I liked. After Abernathy Farm, I stopped by Drumlin Diner and stole everything that was inside, but didn't manage to get much except I think a pipe pistol and a bit of healing supplies. After I was finished raiding the nearby settlements, I decided to make my way to Concord and see if I could deal with the raiders there, and survey says not really. The raiders themselves weren't that tough, but I couldn't really gun bash them to death because I didn't have a high strength stat, so I was forced to use a bit of my ammo. The unfortunate truth about this is that I was very limited on ammo, so I couldn't actually take out all the raiders, so I was forced to move on. It's okay, I had a plan, so I immediately started heading south so I could make my way to Diamond City. The way I see it, Diamond City is practically a gold mine of stolen items, so I decided to be one of the first places I'd stop by. I was right, by the way, about it being a gold mine. As soon as I got there were loads of items that I could take, and I did get a few good supplies. For the most part, I only got healing items in the form of food, but I also got a bit more rounds for my pipe pistol, which I would put to good use. Other than that, though, I didn't really have the necessary skills to steal from all the residents, so I was forced to go back to Concord to level up a few times. The raiders inside the museum were no trouble at all, but of course the Deathclaw is what we're all really here for. I couldn't really fight the big lizard very easily, but I did steal a baseball bat which I promptly used to try to put it down, but unfortunately it still wasn't enough. You see, the baseball bat is way too slow, so I can't actually hit it while I'm inside the buildings, so I need to either exit the building and hit it, or use VATS. The problem with this is that the Deathclaw can hit me while I'm outside the building, no duh, so it was sort of a double-edged sword for me. Luckily, there was unnamed option number 3, which was just let Preston kill the Deathclaw. When I went inside and talked to the Man of Minutes, I realized that he gave me 100 caps and 50 fusion cells. I have a very weird taste in items, so I couldn't keep these things, so I just got rid of the 50 fusion cells. Now the caps are actually a problem because I can't just outright drop them, so instead I went to a nearby vendor, bought a couple things, and then dropped those things. Now that my mini crisis was averted, I started making my way to Cambridge because I wanted to help Dance out. I am using the term help very loosely here though, because I don't actually plan on helping Dance. No, I plan on letting him do all the work and then getting credit for it. I was originally planning to side with the Minutemen in this run, but that later changed. But I still wanted to help Dance out right now because I wanted to get into the Prydwen later, so that I could steal everything that's laying out in the armory. Little did I know, I just set up the godsend of this run. You see, the Prydwen doesn't just supply you with the stuff that's in the armory. What I didn't really think about is you could actually get infinite fusion cores from the Prydwen, and those fusion cores just happen to be stolen. I am getting way too ahead of myself right now. I need to actually focus on the problem at hand, which is of course Arcjet. Now, I can't really battle the synths. The only thing I had to deal with them was my baseball bat, and realistically I'm only doing about 20 damage per hit. Even if I do manage to close the distance, by the time I actually manage to hit the synth, Dance will probably have already killed them, or they had killed me. The only thing I could really do was hide behind the absolute unit that is Paladin Dance, and let him carry me through the entire mission. I did manage to get a few hits in the final room, but it didn't really matter as well, he kinda just ran in there and killed all the synths. Doesn't matter to me though, because now I have my free ticket to the Prydwen, and I can cash it in once I kill Kellogg. While I was helping Dance with his little toaster problem, I leveled up a few times and managed to take a couple useful perks. I decided to put these useful perks to good use by going to Diamond City and finishing what I started. Now this is also where I found one of the most important things of this run. You see, I got a lot of steel from various settlements, but I didn't really have a good use for it. While I was helping Dance, I managed to get Pickpocket Ring 2, which lets you insta-kill someone if you have a grenade or a mine. But here's the thing. Fallout 4 is a bug-free game. You see, I can actually craft caltraps and they count as a mine, and if I put those into someone's inventory, it'll still kill them, it just won't generate the explosion. I could essentially use this as a Mr. Sandman perk to kill anyone who's standing up. Now, there are some drawbacks to doing this, like if you pickpocket someone and they spot you while you're pickpocketing them, they'll kill you, or if someone dies and you're not hidden, everyone will kill you. The trade-off is worth it in my eyes though, so I immediately started killing every guard I could in Diamond City, so that I could start reaching some of the harder to reach areas. My original plan was to wipe out the entire center plaza and go nuts inside of all the food supplies, but unfortunately that couldn't really happen as well as I thought, because A, the town has these little sentry turrets that they call children, as they run around and spot me literally every couple seconds, and 2, there's an immortal guard. Well, not really. He's not actually immortal, but I think he's linked to the other guards in some way, because regardless of how I killed him and where I killed him, everyone would always get mad. On top of this, the guard is in possibly the single worst spot in Diamond City, so I ended up still having to work around him. Eventually I did, and I got a huge amount of healing supplies, but I wasn't too excited because I didn't actually get any weapons. Possibly even worse, I was still lacking out on armor as well, but that was later fixed when I went inside Henry Cook's apartment, and I opened one of his safes. Inside that safe there happened to be a handful of Raider armor, which is just about the worst armor in the game, but hey, it's something. Just for a bit of perspective, I found an army helmet inside of Arturo's hut, and it had more damage resistance than the entire armor set combined. Hey, it's something though, so I was happy. So happy, in fact, I decided to make my way to Vault 114 so I could try and take out the Triggerman. Now, I hated everything about Vault 114. I hated how the Triggerman had more health than me. I hated that the Triggerman had more armor than me. I hated that the Triggerman had better weapons than me. I hated how, regardless of how I tackled the situation, the last Triggerman would always be the strongest idiot in the bunch. And I hated that the Triggerman would spot me regardless if I was hiding or not. The thing I hated the most, however, was the fact that it took me 6 tries to kill Skinny Malone because Nick kept stepping in front of my Molotov cocktails. Regardless, I eventually got it done, and I will now be repressing the memory of the vault from now on. Now, after the disaster that was Vault 114, I had a problem. I really was starting to run out of ammo for my pipe pistol, which is an abomination by the way, and I was starting to run out of people to pickpocket. Luckily, inside the vault I managed to level up my lockpick, and I decided to try my hand at one of the safes in Diamond City. This was really worth it, as it turns out that safe happened to have a 10mm pistol in it, and that thing was possibly one of the best finds in the entire run. Now, when you normally play the game, something like a 10mm pistol is something you'd kind of laugh at. You have it since the beginning and you don't have to worry about finding another one. In runs like these, however, something like a 10mm pistol is a godsend just because it's a gun that's actually designed for the player to use. I decided to take this 10mm pistol for a whirl in Diamond City Blues, so I started shooting up the Triggermen at the drug deal. Once they were all dead and in the dust, I decided to take the caps and chems just because, hey, you kind of steal them from the Triggermen. Yes, I'm not stupid, I'm aware this is a cheap shot, but by now I was desperate for anything that would tip the scales in my favor, and I was hoping that the drug deal would do it. In a way, I was kind of right. You see, I was able to use the 800 caps I stole to buy a few more rounds for my 10mm pistol, and that pistol happened to carry me through Fort Hagen. Mind you, I still can't really hurt the synths while I'm inside, but I was able to use it to take down a few of them as well as Kellogg. Now, Kellogg wasn't that bad, mainly because I was able to use a mixture of jet and the 10mm to take him out. It did cost me around 50 rounds, however. Normally not that much of a headache, but in this run that's like losing a small fortune. His synth backup wasn't too bad, so I was able to deal with them after he was dead, but I was really glad to get out of the fort. Once I was outside, I saw the Prydwen, and the run lost any form of challenge it had held. You see, for a faction so heavily guarded, the Brotherhood happens to leave most of its crap on the floor, and most of that crap I could steal. Now, better yet, 90% of the stuff in the Prydwen is marked as red, so it actually is fair to the run, so now I basically got an infinite source of everything. You see, the NPCs in the Prydwen shuffle out now and again, and each one of those NPCs have a bit of ammo and some food. I could use this to get infinite food and fusion cells, but also, and possibly most importantly, infinite fusion cores. Now, what am I going to use those fusion cores for? Well, for power armor, of course. There happens to be a lot of suits of power armor just laying around in the Prydwen ripe for the taking, so I took one of them, and now I don't have to worry about armor ever again. On top of that, I got a gauze rifle and laser pistol from the Prydwen's armory, so weapons weren't exactly a problem either. Now, I still had to supply ammo for the laser pistol. Let's not kid ourselves, gauze rifle ammo isn't coming anytime soon, but honestly it wasn't nearly as bad as trying to get 10mm pistol rounds, and the laser pistol does a lot more damage than a pipe pistol. Now, I was worried that my armor might eventually run out of, well, durability, and then I wouldn't have a way to repair it. You see, the Brotherhood really thinks of everything, as they apparently have infinite power armor. You see, once you steal the fusion cores off a Brotherhood Knight, sometimes the Knight will regenerate the core, but more often than not, they'll just run away, but the chassis stays there. The thing is, every now and again, the chassis gets refreshed with power armor, and I could get some power armor with about half durability. Now this is where I came up with another rule for the run, where I'm not actually allowed to sell any of the stuff I steal, and that's mainly because of this. You see, if I keep stealing the power armor, I could sell it back to Proctor Tegan and then buy as much stuff as I want. I don't want to do that, so instead I decided to make that rule. After I was done looting the Prydwen for everything that was inside, I decided I'd get back to the story and go to the memory den. Nothing too much to say, it's the memory den, so I was in and out before long. Once I was out, I realized Kant had a heart attack, so I stole everything in his room before leaving. Now, once I left the building, I realized Hancock was having his address. Now, normally I don't care about this because it doesn't really matter on repeated playthroughs, but on this one it means a lot. You see, every shop owner comes to watch the address, which means all their supplies are free for the taking. This little crime spree netted me a bit of ammo as well as a fat man, which would definitely get some good use later on. Now, up until this point, I've been fairly good. I followed the story pretty closely and I haven't cheated. Now I think I deserve a reward, and what's a better reward than wiping out everyone the railroad knows and loves?
And his name is John C.
Never gets old, does it? With the Locomotive Society of 2287 in the ground, I decided I'd go to the glowing sea and meet the big green man. Now the trot through the glowing sea wasn't too bad as I was in power armor, so radiation wasn't really a problem and creatures weren't really a problem. Well, except stingwings. There were multiple instances where I ran into a pack of the wannabe cazadors and they promptly put me out of my misery. It didn't matter too much though because I quick save like a freak and there aren't too many in the glowing sea. Once I finished trudging through the radioactive mud, I talked to Little Green and he told me to go to Big Green Building. I wasn't ready to go to Big Green Building, however, so instead I went and talked to Big Green. Well, I say talk, I mean I murdered him in cold blood. Compared to previous runs, Fort Strong was pretty easy. Keep in mind the last time I was here, I wiped out everything here with an Institute pistol. This time I actually have some decent guns, so it was relatively a breeze. The super mutant behemoth was still a threat, but I had a fat man, which unfortunately I had to use too many nukes to take him out, but honestly I really wasn't going to use those for anything else. The mutants inside the building also weren't really a problem, as once again I have a laser pistol, and super mutants are weak against energy damage. This meant that I acted like a temporary weed killer, as I destroyed everything green in my surroundings. Speaking of green, it was finally time to head to Greenetech, and I finally was able to put my 10 mil to good use. I didn't want to use my laser pistol against the gunners, because a good chunk of them use leather armor, and so it'd probably just be wasted. Instead, I decided to use my 10mm pistol, and it worked extremely well. Most of the gunners couldn't take more than 3 shots from the pistol, so I was making my way through the building in record time. The only gunner that proved any form of threat was the missile launcher one, but I'm in power armor so I could actually tank a full blast from it. After that, the rest of the building went pretty smoothly until I got to the courser, and I decided to use my Gauss rifle. It turns out because I haven't actually invested any perk points into Rifleman, the Gauss rifle was pretty bad. I wound up wasting all my shots for it, and it still wasn't enough to kill the courser, so I had to resort to using the 10mm again. Luckily, eventually the job got done, and I got the courser chip, so I took it to the railroad to get decoded. Now here's where I ran into another problem. In order to get into the Institute, I need a couple pretty niche parts for the teleporter, one of those being a military-grade circuit board. Now I can't actually find one during this run, as I'm not sure if you could steal one from any place. Now I know one of you guys are going to mention the bunker where Paladin Brandis is in, but I don't think you could actually steal it, so I was a bit lost. Now this isn't the first time that something like this has happened, but honestly I really can never think of a way around it, so instead I decided to just take Kellogg's military grade circuit board. I kind of pass this off as my one free pass of the run, as let's face it, it would have taken me forever to find any other way to get it. Now the reason this part was so confusing, and the only reason I'm mentioning it, is I don't know if I should count the military grade circuit board as a quest item. You see, I always leave quest items out of these sort of rules, just because Fallout 4 would be impossible in most challenges if you do include them. The thing is, the military grade circuit board isn't a quest item, it's a piece of junk. Normally it isn't a problem because you don't have to go through any special requirements to find one, but in this case it actually is a problem because you don't have to do any special requirements to find one. Therefore I can't steal one. Anyways, that's enough rambling for now. I got inside of the Institute, I talked to all the leaders and Sean, and then I started save scumming Dr. Lee's speech checks. You see, I hate Virgil's lab. There's no way around it. I hate it, and I hate it, and I hate it. And if you think I have nothing better to do than sit in front of my screen and try to pass the same speech check over and over again, you're wrong. Now the thing is, in order to actually talk Dr. Lee back into the Brotherhood, you need to pass around 3 speech checks, one of them being a red one. Now I managed to pass the first 2 after a few attempts, but the third was obviously a problem. Eventually, after a lot of save scumming, I managed to pass it, and it was broken. You see, even though I did pass it, it for some reason went back to the speech check before it, and I got stuck in a sort of loop. There was nothing I could do about it, even reloading wouldn't fix it, so I gave up and went inside of Virgil's lab anyways. There goes 30 minutes of my life down the drain. Virgil's lab was a headache like always, but I'm not really too concerned about it as I once again repressed this from my memory, so I went inside, grabbed the holotape, and grabbed the juice for Little Green. I gave the holotape to Dr. Lee, and now she's magically back with the Brotherhood, and then I killed everybody in the Institute. After all that was finished, I had to deal with Liberty Prime, and I don't have too much to say. I put out fires for various people in the Brotherhood, built some magnet doohickey, and knocked a robot lady senseless with a baseball bat. With all that being finished, I was told that Dance was a robot, and I didn't feel like taking the peaceful options this time. No, instead I went inside the bunker swinging. Well, that's metaphorical swinging at any rate. I wasn't actually using my baseball bat. I decided to use my laser pistol to dispatch all of Dance's robot brethren, and Dance himself. Once I was done turning the previous paladin into goop, I picked up something to remember him by as well as his holotags, and then moved on. For my next task, I had to kill the railroad again, and so I went and killed the railroad again. Now, I don't remember too much about what happened inside the Old North Church. All I know is that one thing led to another, and I wound up at the Red Rocket truck stop shooting down Brotherhood vertibirds. Funny how these things happen. With the railroad 6 feet under the underground, it was time to go to Mass Fusion and grab Liberty Prime's big battery. Now, by now, I was getting a little tired, so I wasn't afraid of using a few skips, by which I mean I jumped off the building right down to Mass Fusion's entrance, so I skipped all the fighting with the synths. Once I grabbed the beryllium agitator, I tripped all the alarms and had to face off against the sentry bot, but honestly it wasn't too bad as I had a couple pistols, as well as a load of jet. I used that to take it out as quickly as possible, and then did the same to the Assaultron, so I was out before long. Now something pretty cool happened here in that one of the Brotherhood soldiers just happened to be legendary, so I was actually able to pickpocket his gun off him. This gun was a penetrating 10mm pistol, which isn't the best, but it is pretty good. Still, it was pretty cool to get a legendary weapon in this playthrough, which was something I wasn't expecting to happen at all. Armed with the best weapons my sticky fingers could find, I was ready to finally take on the Institute with Liberty Prime. I say with Liberty Prime even though he killed me on my first attempt. On my second attempt, I actually stayed away from the big robot like I was instructed, and it went relatively smoothly. Now the Brotherhood can handle most of the synths, but I still wanted to help out a little bit, so I used my laser pistol to take out as many as possible. By the time I actually got past the old robotics section, I was out of laser cells, so I had to move on to my 10mm. Now my 10mm was able to carry me through most of the Institute as I shot my way through every synth that came in my path, as well as every scientist. By the time I got to the reactor room, I was down to my last 100 rounds, which carried me pretty far, but ultimately it wasn't enough. Luckily, I was able to round things out with my pipe pistol that I never dropped, so I was able to wipe out the last of the Institute folk inside of the reactor, and move on to blowing up the entire building. Once I was teleported out of the malfunctioning reactor, I talked to the Robo Pinocchio and told him to go die. He wasn't too happy about this, so he did some psychological voodoo on me, but I still didn't listen to him. After that, I was teleported out of the Institute. I clicked the big red button, finishing the game and proving, yeah, you can beat Fallout 4 as a thief. I didn't though. I'm still not counting that military grade circuit board. Well, that was a lot harder than I was expecting, but it still was loads of fun. I'm still so glad I could do these sorts of runs for you guys, and I hope you did enjoy. I don't really have too much to say in this last little bit, so I'm just going to finish off the video. Regardless, that's all I have for today's video. If you did enjoy, please consider subscribing, otherwise I'll catch you in the next one.